Got it. Welcome to Blue Monday. We are back after a short hiatus last week, and we're back to talk about, amongst other things, an Everton win, Dave, and a very, very routine Everton win. It was nice, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Going 2-0 up in games makes you more anxious than going 1-0 up in games or drawing 0-0 in games, doesn't it, when you get to the last few minutes? But yeah, Everton looked competent, didn't he? Everton looked like a much better side. Everton looked like something we haven't seen so far this season. Or we've seen flashes of it this season, but it was nice to see them put it through 90 minutes of a game
Yeah,
and totally deserving a win as well. I mean, how often have we been able to say that?
that's it, isn't it? It's sort of. I don't even think we really looked threatened during the game. To be honest, they didn't have their first shot till the 80th minute. I mean, that was a lot of that was down to how bad they were because I thought they were pretty terrible. But you can only beat what's put in front of you, and I think Everton just handled the game really well. Ipswich are the team who last season were just passing it round all manner of championship teams, and did really well. Um, it's a big step up to do it in this league, and I think that defensive mistake that led to the first one was down to good pressure from the Everton players. And it's just something when you've got players the standard of Element and Die, um, you can't get away with that, can you? Losing the ball in the box like that.
No, not at all. Not in this division, but somebody who's as clinical as he is. I mean, we've seen that so far, haven't we? I look back many times at that goal he scored away at Leicester,
Yeah,
and you're thinking of someone. He is a striker as much as everything else. I think he's got everything in his bag. He's got everything you need to do that. And I mean, actually intrigued by what we've seen him do so far, what other areas in which he can play, because I think there's a versatility to where you can play him across that front line, across that, just in front of the midfield, on the wings. It'd
yeah,
be interesting to see. I mean, I think it'll be a test of Sean Dyche's credentials as a Everton manager that continues, given the fact he's got a player that I can't recall him having in at any point in his career off the top of my head. Obviously, I didn't watch Burnley every week, but I can't imagine him of having that sort of quality of player and a player that can pull out tricks in which he can really tight positions. Les, and what I like about him is he draws defenders out of play. You
yeah.
seen the mistake that was made to set him up. He's in and around the area. He's buzzing around. He seems to be like an sort of an irritating force against sides. I think he's the type of player that never stops, just
Yeah.
just chewing at people all the time. And um, it it gets me like excited watching us. And how often have you been able to say that? I mean,
I know.
I see him when he's on the ball. It always feels like he's that type of player where something's going to happen. I know a lot of people have compared him to Pienaar. I disagree. I don't think he's that much of a Pienaar kind of
He's
player
a
because
bit quicker for one thing, isn't he?
yeah, he is. And I also think that the Pienaar, obviously Pienaar and Baines is something we always talk about, almost like a legendary status of the left hand side of our team. By no means would I say that he needs Young or Mikalenko. Mikalenko, to his credit, was part of that goal, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Certainly the one we set up for Michael Keane. And it's a little bit more comfortable to have a natural left back there, but you don't see them being a Baines and Pienaar kind of partnership, do you? And I don't think Dye needs that. I don't
No.
think he needs anybody there. I think he's somebody who very much is of his own player, which is a rarity in the Premier League. And you see certain clubs like that have players who are happy to receive the ball and just power on themselves, happy to just direct themselves at the opposition. He's that kind of player, and there aren't many of them in the league. So, you know, he's got a lot to show for us. I think he's somebody who gives Everton every chance to go and get results in games. And how often, again, have we been able to say that about anybody we've had for many years?
I know. And another player who sort of always makes something happen at some point in the game, at one end of the pitch or the other. Not always good either. But I think when you stick Michael Keane in and around the opposition box, magic happens, doesn't it? It's like that goal was just incredible. I think I
Yeah,
was I was speaking to Rob yesterday. We did the kickabout and also on post match, and it was just like his positioning for that goal was striker's instinct positioning. It was like at Leicester, he talked about Ndai's goal there at Leicester. The first player who would have been ready for the rebound and that when Ndai had that shot at Leicester was Michael Keane. He was the furthest player forward. He's got this instinct in the opposition box. He just knows where to be at the right time. And I think I said at the weekend as well, his goals aren't typical centre half goals. It's not like a toey from 2 yards or a towering header. he just scores cracking goals, doesn't he? And I think that for me was possibly his best.
Yeah, it was. I think. Well, it's well compared it to the Spurs one at
Yeah.
Goodison. That was ridiculous. That
Although
one.
Palace as well with his left foot was good.
I mean, we could talk about the fact we're sitting here talking about multiple top goals that Michael Keane scored. Says a lot about him, really, that he's become this bit of an enigma now, hasn't he? Because by no means do I think he's been Everton's worst defender throughout many of our games so far this season.
Yeah.
I think probably reward that to Tarkovsky, given how poor he's been, in my opinion. And look, he's a
But
centre back.
I
That's
just
go on,
just
sorry.
just want to pick up on that then. So it came out at the weekend that Michael Keane's been playing with a bit of a dead leg. Tarkovsky's also been playing uh, with an injury as well, which I think's been clear since the Preston game for me.
Yeah.
What does that say about Jake O'Brien? Like that he can't get in one position ahead of two injured centre backs. Now, is this we don't know, do we? We don't know whether it's down to him just not being any good in training, not being up to speed, and whether it's down to Dice just not liking him. But at some point, we do really need to have the question answered: is why did we sign him?
Absolutely. And yeah, I've spoken to a lot of friends about this so far, and I think first of all, before talking about him and what he might bring to us, and we've seen him start one game, I think, and come on in two. Um, the thing I start thinking about beforehand is how was he brought to the club? Now, from what we've seen with Ndiaye so far, what we've seen with Lindrum at a certain extent, Mangala as well. I've looked at these and seen real promise from each of them, particularly Ndiaye. He's looked fantastic. He's been our
Yeah,
best player by a country mile so far. But I'm thinking, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in terms of how Kevin Thelwell's gone about getting these players and how much of Sean Dyche has in his say of who comes in, which he very much should because he's the manager of the football club,
well,
no
yeah,
less. Um, and that leads me to O'Brien a little bit because I think we've seen him start one game against Southampton. This is a fellow who's got a bit of pedigree in the French division, hasn't he? He's won the French league, has he, with Lyon? Um,
and I think they got the French Cup final, didn't he? Did he
French
win the
Cup
league?
final, that's
I'm
right.
not sure,
Yeah.
but yeah, he did well there. He scored in the final for PSG.
No, he's no mug. Let's be
Yeah,
honest. It's not like we've got this kid from Championship side or anything lower than that. He's also played for his country a couple of games as well. How old is he? 23 years old, I think he
I
is.
think
So, I mean,
so. Yeah,
he's not a baby, is he? He's not coming through at the age of 21, 22. And look, I've probably made the mistake and jumped ahead far too much as other people. It's a slight comparison with Branthwaite in terms of being abroad, sort of learning his trade and then coming into the Premier League. I think what's irritated me the most has been the fact that, again, ironically, I think Tarkovsky's been the worst of the two at the back. So it's sort of, I think it's difficult for many fans to say, "Oh, hang on, he should be in for Keane." Immediately, that'd be the go-to saying for all of us, wouldn't it?
yeah,
We've just bought a centre back for 15 million, however much it was. Get him in for Michael Keane because Michael Keane's been that bad. There's not that much of a shout because it's Tarkovsky who's been the worst of the pair. So nobody's sitting there shouting, "Get that O'Brien in for Tarkovsky," our club captain, by the way.
yeah,
And then, well, Seamus is out, and I'm looking at it and thinking, well, it seems that I have I have sympathy with the lad because he should have been given opportunities. He should have been brought in. Dare to say it, and people might scoff at what I'm saying here, but when we've played five at the back, I mean, if Evan gets to a point in a game where they want to play five at the back, and more importantly, win headers from set pieces, that lad seems to be ideal for that role. At least, at the very least, like you've got to just test him out. You've got to give him
yeah,
a go. And we've let we crack on about it, don't we? This is the third time we've led the game by 2-0. When's the period you want to bring a new centre half on? I'm not too sure.
yeah, yeah. It's unlikely. I think given the start we had to the season when we were like, well, shipped 13 goals in about six
Mm.
games or something. It's unlikely he's going to come in now. Is it when it seems to have settled down a bit? That's the fourth game without defeat.
Yeah.
Two wins, two draws. It's a decent return, and it's nicely timed. I think going into this run of games now where we need to pick up points. But overall, I think we were just like really good value for that win. The penalty shout. Do you think it was a penalty?
Well, it's interesting you put that in, isn't it? Because I think the immediate reference was to what happened against Newcastle, wasn't it?
Yeah,
We're there obviously on the other end of this coming up our end. No, I don't think it was a penalty. But I will refer to the point, Les, that I think you would contradict yourself by saying it's not a
I
penalty.
will. And I'm going to tell you why right now.
Yes, here we go.
So,
That's what people
well,
listen for, mate.
for
That's what
me,
people listen for.
right, for me, that Calvert-Lewin one set the precedent, right? Basically, that set the precedent that that wasn't a penalty. Now, had that been given, it would have been outrageous because
Mm.
exactly the same happened to us against Newcastle. Thinking about it, and I did allude to this at the time. It's probably more obstruction than a penalty because he's obstructed what the player wants to do. I did say that at the time. I did say it should be a penalty because you never get obstruction for anything like that. But technically, it is obstruction. It's kind of getting in the way of the player and the ball, isn't it? More than fouling them. You're not going through the man as the defender. You're not going through the player. You're getting your body in between him and the ball. But maybe you're obstructing what they're doing. But yeah,
But
I'll take
that's
that.
exactly, let's go back to it. That's exactly what I said
Was
about Dan
it?
Burn.
Oh
I
well.
said that where's he going to put his foot if he's trying to compete to get the ball? He's going to put his foot in front of Calvert-Lewin, and there's no guarantee that
Oh
Calvert-Lewin gets the ball. That was the point I made at this
yeah.
time.
Although
It's
there
sort
is
of,
still.
it's quite funny we've reached this stage at that game away at Ipswich, isn't it? This is going to happen
But
every single game now.
But I suppose there is a case as well to sort of say, well, what's the defender doing putting his leg there if he can't get the ball?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
to impede
You
himself.
know, and it goes back to
At least they've been consistent.
well, absolutely, yeah. Consistent
And
about being inconsistent, maybe, but it's the exact type of thing that you'd see undoubtedly a free kick given outside of the box, and
well,
that's the kind of thing that really pisses me off.
yeah,
The fact that they up the bar of what you need to do. I mean, it's been an age-old thing, hasn't it? It's always been the case there. But if VAR is going to be of any use at all, keep everything on a consistent level, as
but
opposed to thinking, oh, you know what, I'm
yeah,
putting a higher bar on what's going to happen in this game if I give a penalty. Whereas if it was in the middle of the park, I'd have given a free kick. That's criminal that it hasn't changed in that regard. So it's even worse whether you think it's a penalty or whether it's not. The consistency of that decision should remain throughout the entire pitch, not just in a particular area of the pitch.
I think we need more free kicks in the penalty area like we used to have. Never get them anymore, do you?
Free kicks in the pen.
Yeah, where
Do
everyone
you
would
know?
stand on the line.
I know, yeah. Do you know what we haven't seen either as well? This might sound silly. You don't see as many free kicks on the edge of the box that you used to.
Yeah,
I don't know if anybody spotted that or anybody agrees with me with it because again, that looks like something that it has to be at a higher level of foul than it happens a little bit deeper in the ground. I think that that's slowly, well, maybe not slowly as, but that's creeped into what referees do based on VAR because free kick. I mean, it happens watching a Liverpool game against Chelsea. And I think one was given for Cole Palmer. He ends up blasting it at their bar, at their players, and it goes out for the corner. And it's just like nobody have seen much of it. But it felt to me like a couple of occasions I seen that happen with Chelsea players on the edge of their box. It's stonewall foul, but it's not given because of the area of the pitch where it is.
yeah,
It's almost like the deeper you get towards the 18-yard box, the more obvious a foul it's got to be. And I think that's
it's
where are we going with amateurs of the game? And I don't know if anybody agrees with that. I mean, do get in touch if you do or don't. But it does feel as if now there's no level of just saving a free kick when it's a free kick. It's
yeah.
dependent on where it is.
Yeah, it is. But just to finally finish off on that, I think the consistency was nice. That like the referee, I can see why he gave it on first viewing, but then when he went to the screen, although I did think he was gonna like just not overturn his own decision there for the first time.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see that consistency from against the Newcastle game. Just before we move on to the second part, I forgot to do the housekeeping at the beginning. So if you're listening on a podcast, give us a rating and a review. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment on any of the things we speak about. And yeah, and let all your mates know about it as well. And pass it on. Share it far and wide for us. And also, we're looking for a sponsor, aren't we, Dave, for this?
We're
So
always look well, yeah. I mean, you look at how many people we get out to as well. I mean,
yeah,
there's
you're the number
places all
one.
around the world that you'd never thought existed. They get in touch with us and say well, they love listening to us. They come and visit us as well at the Denby. So Yeah, there's plenty of different places that we go out to, so
Yeah.
it's well worth having a chat to us if you want to extend what you do with yourselves and various bits and pieces that you might want us to get your message out to. Then give us
Yeah,
a shout. We
basically
can talk it. Yeah.
We can't have Matt and Paddy being sponsored for the byline and us not being sponsored for this, can we? That's just outrageous.
Oh,
So
that's what. And look, they're doing. It seems like they're doing live shows. You can go and watch them doing podcasts now and everything. Do you know what I mean? How far behind are we doing Blue Monday like this? Feel like
but
feel
the
ashamed.
but the thing is though, when you got the Athletics Paddy Boyland on board, you expect this higher level, don't you? So it's
Well,
that's
I,
what it
I
is.
know. I know for a fact working at the BBC, the Athletics have to take a certain fee in order to do what they're doing these days. Oh, I won't go too further into that. I'm only joking, Paddy, because
We'll we'll move on to another.
Paddy was one of the originals when we started the Blue Room. So I'm so fond upon him. So I don't. I'll never I'll never begrudge him earning a living from what he does because
No,
it's so good what he do at the Athletic, isn't it?
and he's very, very good at what he does. We'll move on then to another publication, The Scotsman, who at the weekend ran a story about Graeme Sharp saying he's never going to go back to Goodison Park. A bit of a strange piece because it started off talking a little bit about what happened, then went into this massive section on like how good Graeme Sharp was for Everton, which I know that's a lot of context to the whole story. And it was a really good thing to read because like some of the stuff they mentioned, it was brilliant. And he is a club legend. He's the club's second highest top scorer, only beaten by Dixie Dean. So
Mhm.
that says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Won a lot with the club. But it all turned sour, didn't it? With the whole headlock-gate. I think it was before that there was stuff when I don't think he was on the board at this point, but he was a club ambassador and he sort of took the piss out of one of the protests, I think from
yeah,
it might have been Kirby. I could be doing a disservice there. But
yeah.
I
A good
think
few years ago, I think it
yeah,
was
when
like
he's
when they were he was in the reception room with Darren Griffiths, I think, and the sort of I think the pointing and laughing at
and he said
everybody.
one man and his dog were on this march or something like that.
Yeah.
It was pretty disparaging. I'll have to find out if it was. I should have looked before. But yeah, there's been a few of these threads where he's come down on the club side, and obviously it all came to a head with the headlock story when the board felt they could no longer go to the games, which it did seem a massively over the top gesture when if you think back to them when they had those like few front row seats empty at the ground and stuff like that. And then some people would turn up at away games. It was all a bit mad and not a really nice part in the club's history. But this sort of gave him a chance to put his side of things forward, which personally I don't think he did very well. He just seemed for me to double down on it and be like, yeah, well, you don't really know what happened, but I'm not going back. I think it was a good chance to kind of explain a bit more about, the feeling with the directors because no one else is going to come out and say it. I think he had a good opportunity there, and didn't really do himself any justice, didn't make it clear for any fans. And it's divided a lot of fans, hasn't it? A lot of people are saying, look, he's a club legend. He should be welcome back at the club, which I agree with. He should be. We shouldn't just judge him on that incident because no one came out of that particularly well. But it was a massive slight on the fans, and it did lean into a little bit of a media campaign, didn't it? There was that thing that Ian Wright did, and then he apologised, saying he was out of order, like having a go at Everton fans because the whole situation was ridiculous, and the fans did nothing. What was your take on it? Because I know you've worked with Sharpie in the past, and you know him. What was your take, say, sort of objectively about the piece before we go into like what actually happened? Because that's pretty much conjecture from our part, isn't it? But what did you think of the piece itself?
What you originally said there about the piece itself, it's really interesting read, but I agree with what you said in terms of it seems to just go off on a tangent in a different direction when you actually want to get to the real teeth of what the intent is in terms of the interview. And I would think, not to speak for him, that Graeme Sharp himself would have thought that it was going in a different direction. But when it goes to where he's receiving rightfully the praise he gets for being an Everton player, he's not going to say, "Oh, can we carry on talking about what that issue was in the first
Yeah.
place?" And look, I'm not here to tell a journalist what they're to do, in terms of an interview, but it did seem that way to me when I first read it. That the direction in which it went in was a little bit strange when the entirety of it. Look, I'm pretty sure the Graham wasn't called up by, excuse me for not knowing the gent's name there, the Scotsman, which I'm sure you'll tell me now, Les. When he's called up there, I'm pretty sure that Graeme is looking to explain to an extent what he possibly can explain. Issues that were at the club which he can talk about, issues which he can't talk about, and then move on to his career in the last year at Goodison and all that sort of thing. He wouldn't have said yes to do that interview, to put it in a different perspective. He wouldn't have said yes to do that interview if it wasn't to sort of clarify what had happened in those issues that we've all, it was pretty dreadful what happened back then, wasn't it, on everyone's part, and
Yeah.
not nothing that we wish happened, both
The
fans
journal
and
was Alan Patulak was the journalist.
yeah, and it's a great coup that he's got there as well, because
Yeah.
it's much more difficult these days, but I won't go too far into that anyway. It was his birthday the other day, so it's good to wish him happy birthday. Excuse me, but yeah, I mean, I feel as if generally, in all walks of life here, Les, as we do as in our jobs, all of us, we have careers where when you have an opportunity to turn yourselves into the what actually happened to explain to people the issues of why something developed, to vilify yourself, other people, that sort of thing. Why would you avoid a good opportunity to do so? And personally, as a fan and as somebody who knows him, I did look at that and I thought, well, what's the intent of what you've said unless you actually tell us what's gone on? Where he said, people don't understand behind closed doors. That's not verbatim in terms of what he said there. I'm not too sure how that makes him look any better. Well, it certainly hasn't for many fans, has it? I mean, I completely agree with you, and that's without knowing him relatively well and having worked with him for many years, that he absolutely deserves the praise he's had. He absolutely talks about the anniversary of his goal at Anfield. He should be on that pitch at the end of the season as somebody who walks on head and shoulders with everybody else who've been absolute legends for our football club down the years and won us titles and whatnot. Um, the fact he isn't, he can address that himself. I think he can. He's able to mend a lot of that stuff. I think that he didn't choose to do in that interview itself. That said, um, when he started saying why he thinks there's there's too many issues for him to go back to Goodison, and there's been a real personal issue. I think he did a show, didn't he? He was as a guest speaker in somewhere in recent months, talking about how like emotional he was about the way in which things ended there with Everton. And I get, certainly on a personal level, I get when you feel as if you can't say something because it'll make things worse for yourself. I get that,
Yeah.
but I don't see it. Look, when he says we don't know what's happened, then yeah, you have to take that because we don't. But it does make me think. It takes me firstly when I think about that and I, respond to that when I first read it. I think, well, it must have been something quite significant if you're not willing to tell us what it was. I don't think anybody has an obligation to tell us what it was. But at the other side of that coin, if he's to return to Everton, if he's to get in a position where he feels comfortable to return to Everton, because I think that's what he indicated that he's not for the
Yeah.
reasons that went about in the first place. When you get to a position like that, I just think, Les, that there's a comfortable chance there to say something to a guy who's writing a piece. It's not like, we've asked him to come live on the radio. More than happily talk to him. We've done a fantastic piece. If anyone's shameless plug here, but the piece he did to us about his love for Everton and on the Diaries series that we did a couple of years ago. Well worth a listen to that about how much he adores Everton. There's no question about that. But yeah, it sits uncomfortable. It's quite a sour taste in the mouth that I get from how it went about and sadly how it came to pass in the position we're in right now with him.
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? Because, it wouldn't be the first time that the club has sort of let ex-employees take a hit for
Yeah.
things that have gone wrong. So, you obviously think of Gary Speed. No one knows what happened then. There was a lot of rumours and talk about what happened. It's never really come out. He was just one of them. Wayne Rooney, another one. Was Was he sort of forced out by the club and it was like, well, no, you've asked for this move? Was he sort of done a disservice when he left? We never know these things, and big businesses and football clubs have NDAs in place that you can't talk about this. But with this, it's kind of like, I mean, if he has got an NDA, who's gonna sue him now if he broke it? I suppose it's the club who's got the NDA. So if that is in place, then he can't say anything, can he? Because he will get sued. But then why not just say that? Just say I literally cannot say what happened because there's an NDA in place, and then it's sort of like, well, I don't, people probably, if anyone's on the side of like saying no, he should never come back because of what he did in that whole situation, I imagine that could make you mellow a little bit and think, well, okay, maybe stuff's gone on that we don't realize, we can't be told, and just sort of see it as water under the bridge and say, yeah, let's just think about the player and not the fella who was sort of on the club payroll after he stopped playing.
There's something in this that maybe many people don't consider. And I was talking to a really, really good friend who knows Sharpie well the other day, and that's about, you think back to when players like him were at the top of their game at a club at Everton in the 1980s. We're talking about here. Look at the 1980s from a financial perspective compared to what the Premier League became when Graeme Sharp was at his peak at Everton.
Just quickly on that, it
Yeah.
wasn't it wasn't even between the the mid-80s team and the Premier League. It was literally when Colin Harvey took over, that summer, transfer fees went huge, player
Well, yeah.
wages went huge, and that was part of the big divide in the changing room that Colin Harvey had to deal with because the older players who'd won the lot were getting paid less than the new players who'd just come in, and it caused a massive rift in the squad. So I guess it's a good point from his point of view because he was even below, what was expected when the Premier League started. So his wages would have been well lower. But yeah, go on, sorry.
Well, no, that's exactly right. What you've said there, and just to double down on that, I've spoken to many former players who feel quite bitter towards how the Premier League and what football players' funds are like these days, because they missed out on it just purely based on their age.
Yeah,
You can imagine a Graham Sharp these days, right now, what he get. Certainly, on a weekly basis, let alone a transfer fee. It's a discussion I think many shows and many people have had, many fans have had at the pub, saying, "Oh, he'd be worth this amount at this stage, he'd be worth that amount." But in serious terms, he finished the peak of his career at Everton. Um, Before he went, I think he finished at Bangor, didn't he, in the end? And you think about his wages back then, he's just on the cusp of almost making it to the Premier League when transfers just got ridiculously high, fees, contracts got ridiculously high. Now I'd completely be, if that was me in my shoes, I'd be incredibly bitter about that. I don't know about anybody else. If I'm thinking I can set my life up as a millionaire here, if I was born 10 years later than what I actually was, I can get that from players. Um, so with that in mind, and I'm not trying to sort of be a bit of a cop out on this, but at the end of the day, you've got to go and make a living.
yeah,
And I work with Sharpie for 10, 11 years now. When I was at Radio City, become a decent friend with him. We spoke quite a lot, certainly about Everton. I'd see him on, a few days a week when we do shows, and that level of um bitterness towards the games these days certainly wasn't something that come out of it the way in which he spoke about it. But when you're a fan, so and we do it as well. Les, we how many times I take the piss out of you for saying you always banging on about the 80s. If it was in the 80s, even in walks of life, how much money did you earn in the 80s compared to what you're in now? It's like life changes quite quickly. With football, it did. Um, and I feel as if when he's got to a place where Everton have offered him a job,
yeah,
who's he to say no? It's the issue that I think many fans have got, and I think many fans continue to talk about is, do you sell your soul to a certain extent? Maybe not how drastic I've referred to there, but I'd like people to think that they're understanding what I mean by that. In terms of
yeah,
if you're offered a certain job somewhere and you need to earn a living, do you take it or do you not?
yeah.
Do you have a family to provide for? Do you not? Now, listen, I've never been to Graham's house. I've never been in and around his family. I've no idea what sort of wealth he lives at. No idea whatsoever. But I do get the impression that nobody would take a job that has got that level of difficulty and that level of scrutiny on it unless they needed it in a particular situation, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Like the fact we still have now Graham Stewart, who I know well, Ian Snowden, who I know well too, have continued to work for Everton Football Club as ambassadors.
Well,
So I do I do add that facet to my take on this. But the overall thing, Les, I think to indicate towards we're going shortly, it's incredibly sad that he doesn't want to go back to Goodison, that many fans don't want him to go back to Goodison. And I applaud fans who've said, look, it's water under the bridge when you get to a stage where this is the last year, the last few games are coming to a Goodison Park and Graeme Sharp's not going to be there. Like you said there, greatest goal scorer post-war, and he Dixie got more for us, and that fella doesn't look like he's going to be there. I think that's really sad.
yeah, I'm of the same opinion. I just think life's too short. I mean, the whole fan base was slighted by what happened, and it wasn't a nice situation. But I think we can take it. Well, I don't take it personally. It was aimed at a big fan base, really, which affects us all individually. But I don't think it's something you can particularly take personally. It wasn't like he came out and said, "Dave, you're a knob. I never want to see you at the game again." Or "Les, you're a twat. I never want to see
He
you."
said that a few times to me over the years,
Yeah,
though.
but
Eh?
you know what I mean, though. It's not like it wasn't directed at any one individual in particular, and there probably was that element of self-preservation there, which sometimes at work you do have to do things that you don't
But
particularly like.
the thing is with that, Les, that point you've made there, do you not think he's entitled to that?
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? Him being in that sort of, I mean, in a circle is a bit of a weird term to use, but him being in that sort of boardroom situation and the position he had at the club, he may have seen things completely different to the way we saw it. Even within our own fan base, there was people who absolutely still love Bill Kenwright. There's people who absolutely hate him, and it's so many different opinions across the fan base. But if you are in that situation in the boardroom, you might see that completely different to everyone and think, well, and you might feel some resentment, like why are they being like this? What's going on? We just don't know. I think the disappointing thing for me is that he had an opportunity to sort of put a lot of that to bed in this article, and he didn't. He just doubled down on it and patronised everyone a little bit. I think
Mm.
that's how I came out of the field. It's sort of like, well, you've not really said anything of any value there that sort of put any of our minds at ease when it would have been quite easy, even if it was just some blind little plaudits. Um, he just seemed to come across as really hard done to
But
without thinking.
sorry, I was
Right.
just going to say, going back to the point you mentioned there, there's an NDA or anything like that. I think it doesn't make sense to me that he would not say anything if he was able to,
Yeah,
because he's spoken about his love for Everton. He's spoken about how incredibly sad it was, the way in which it is, and how he doesn't feel he can go back to Goodison anymore. If that is, and we take that at face value, then if you were able to clear or clarify what that was, then you'd absolutely you'd do it.
yeah,
So that does make me lean towards what you were saying there. And again, we don't know, but I'm pretty sure, sort of knowing him at a certain level of what it did, he'd say that given how much he loved Everton, how much he loves Everton. And look, maybe people listening to this won't take me at face value what I've said there, and sort of in terms of defending him just because I know him to a certain capacity over working with him for so many years. But I feel as if that is it's just a sour taste there. And maybe hopefully something can be sorted out. I'd probably be talking to him beforehand, and I'd certainly be one of the first begging him to get back to Goodison Park, certainly for the final day of the season.
yeah,
And maybe we see him again and things can be sorted before we move to Bramley Moor. Bramley Moor, how many people say a clean slate at Bramley Moor? Well, there's
yeah.
an opportunity for somebody else there as well.
Yeah, that's it. I think it would be a real shame if he did. But obviously people feel different about it. People do. I know
Yeah.
I probably made light of it a bit there. People do feel, personally slighted by it, and if that's how you feel, that's fine. I just don't really feel like that. But yeah, let us know what you think about that because
Mm.
it's a bit of a sideshow to everything. We've got bigger things to worry about, but it is a decent topic to discuss to see what people think about it. Whether you can sort of see past what happened and just think about like, do you know what, he was a great player, he loves the club. I
Yeah.
think it would be a shame if he didn't sort of make it for the final game of Goodison at least. But yeah, let us know what you think in the comments on YouTube. I think there's some comments on the podcast as well, on there on Spotify and stuff.
Yeah, you can do all that as well
Yeah,
now.
so
Yeah.
yeah, just
You can, it's quite
open.
dangerous that one though. Les. People, people say we're 0 out of 10 and stuff like that, and like to do that sort of thing. Feel free to, by the way, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't damage us at all, and we certainly take everybody's comment and take it forward, don't we? And, and,
Yeah,
and always happy
100%.
to reply like you are, especially on Facebook as well.
Yeah, join the Facebook page as well. We're on there now quite a bit. But yeah, that's it. That's it for this episode of Blue Monday. Good weekend for the Blues. Interesting thing with that Scotsman article and Sharp, as I said, let us know what you think. We've got all the usual stuff coming up this week. Matt and Paddy are doing the byline as we speak. I think that'll be out tomorrow, Tuesday. Got mailbag, that'll be back again this week. Match preview, post match, all the usual stuff.
Yeah.
We'll be back this week, weekly, subs weekly. So yeah, keep it the Blue Room, and we'll catch you soon. Up the Toffees.